And it's not like we're trying to just train out of you your protective strategies.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is have you notice it and be able to talk about it with your spouse and say, hey, this is going on inside me.
This is the Connecting Couples Podcast with the Real Imhoffs.
Hi, I'm Chad Imhoff.
And I'm Angela Imhoff, and we're in our What We Wish We Knew series. This is episode 10. We're bringing to you the content that we really put together for premarital couples. We put together a course to kind of help them prepare for what marriage was going to come at them with, what life was going to come at them with, and we really wanted to equip couples the best way we could to be prepared for their marriage. And as we went through that, we have mentors that pour into them. So many of the mentors said, we wish we would have known this stuff as well, which is what kind of birthed this series of wanting to pass into existing couples that have been married for a long time, 5, 10, 15 years, that have these experiences, that there are things that we just didn't know.
Yeah.
We just didn't get.
Man, and it's crazy because some of the stuff seems like it's like, oh, that when you hear some of the content, you're like, that's obvious and I should know this and somehow I should be able to do this.
Yeah.
But yet when we get into a relationship, it's like, this is pretty tough stuff.
Yeah, it is.
It's not, I talk to couples almost every day. And so I'm like, what I hear all the time is that like, I think I understand, Chad. Yes, there is a cycle. Yes, there are things that go wrong, but golly, to really do it, to change something, to change the interactions in the moment. Yeah. It's just so hard. I mean, it's really tough.
And that's what this particular episode is titled. What we wish we knew, that it was going to be really, really hard.
Marriage, and I want to tell you, it's great. It's brilliant. I had a couple the other day, they go, 95% of the time, Chad, It's awesome. We do really good. We do great 95% of the time. But there is this 5%. Right. And so for most of us, it's that 5% that kind of gets us off track, that kind of messes us up.
That sadly takes all of the other experiences that we have, because it's like, this is really, really bad. And it makes you doubt whether or not the good is really that good. Yeah.
And it's so hard. I mean, if you've been married to the same person for 15 years, 30 years, 10 years, whatever the thing is, and that's been kind of the only relationship you've ever known. In some ways, I think it might be a little bit harder because it's not like you have this other relationship or you haven't been through the pain of divorce. You haven't been through. So it's like, this is what we know. And frankly, if you've done it for 15 or 20 years and it hasn't gone well and you've kind of just been hanging in there and fighting hard for it, it's tough to change things that you believe for 20 years. It's tough to change things that I think about Angela, even for a year or two, right? Like if I believe negative things about her, my brain kind of falls into those patterns. It's like our brains really want to be efficient with our efforts and with our time and with our energy. And so it will automatically go to the assumptions that it thinks about Angela. And it'll also kind of say, hey, be careful because she's going to hurt you in this way or that way. So if you have more time together and you've never been in other relationships, this actually probably is harder.
Sets in the ways that you already know or that you've leaned on. I took a break this summer from seeing individuals and seeing couples because we were, buying and selling a house and renovating and doing the things. And I at the beginning of the summer said, I'm going to take a rest break. I rested none, zilch, zero. We did a lot of other things. But just in the last week or two, I've started to get back into the office again. And I'm sitting across from couples. And it's so encouraging for me to hear couples saying, we've been listening to the podcast. We've actually been having the conversations. And I'm hearing couples just say, the conversations are great. I sit down, my spouse and I both listen to the podcast. You queue up the content. We listen to your example. And then we have the conversation. And in the context of listening to a podcast and having the conversation you queue up, we do great. And then the next day we get into a fight. And I don't remember a single thing that I said in the context of the podcast conversation. Yeah. And so, even a couple times this week, having this conversation of how ingrained our old ways are. We learned these patterns, these coping mechanisms, these strategies for survival from as early as I see my 5-year-old, and she's already developing strategies for her safety, strategies to feel okay, strategies when she is in pain, strategies when she thinks she's in trouble. I see her little brain working. I see her go into these different modes, and she's 5 years old. Add to that my 45 years. Add to that
it's a lot of experience.
The length of time that we're married. And these responses are just really, really worn in.
Yeah.
So here come Chad and Angela. And the hard part is for us, but it's both and what I want to say is we both come from failed marriages.
Yeah.
So we know firsthand just how hard that marriages can be. We have both been in the trenches with our first spouses in vicious cycles that we never got ahead of.
That it never got out of.
No,
yeah, I mean, it literally destroyed the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also know how painful that divorce is, how painful restarting is, how much, at least for my body, that I vowed I will not do this again.
Yeah.
And then meeting Chad and going, okay, I really like this guy. I might want to do this again. But man, my body goes, hey, you remember how bad this was? Do you remember how scary this is? Do you remember how hurt you got? And so here we are, and there is this part of us that we kind of got a do-over with each other because we get to go, okay, we get to start from scratch. We don't have to forgive those, things you did to me for the last 10 years or 20 years. But the truth is we both come to the table with trauma and woundedness and things that are really hard also that play into our relationship, that affect how I respond to Chad or how he responds to me. And so whether you are in the same relationship or whether you have, ended a relationship and have started a new relationship, these patterns that we lean towards, they really, really influence how we interact. And it's hard to get in there and change them.
So what do you do, Angela?
Especially in the moment.
And I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm like, I mean it. Like, it's like, so what do you do? We've got these patterns, we've got this stuff. And I mean, I hear that question all the time. Like, what is our next move? How do we make the next move? Okay. So we see the problem. And I think our podcast is really good at saying this is the problem, right? But it's like, how do we really start to alter that? And when I think about that, I go back to something you said a little bit ago. It's like, yeah, I know this is happening, but in the moment, it's so hard. If you can recognize in the moment that something is happening, for me, it's imperative that I say, oh, we're going down that road.
Yeah.
Like I have to recognize it and calling it out, saying this is the problem. We're doing the thing. I mean, we've had y'all try to name your cycle, name the dance, name it, say we're doing that dance. We're in this, whatever the thing is, however you talk about it as a couple, but to really start to say, oh, we're doing that. But if you've been doing it for 20 years, it's hard to notice it.
Yeah.
And so really your first step is to notice it. The second step for me anyway is to say, we've got to alter how we feel about it. Now that's deep work and that takes a lot of reps. So it's like, sometimes I think people will say, oh, you and Angela seem like you have something figured out. I'm like, maybe, but we've had like 10 years of reps of trying to do it different. And honestly, I say 10 years, we've had 10 years of trying to navigate what it is that we were going to do and trying to figure it out. We didn't have Chad and Angela. We didn't have great therapists at the time. We didn't have
10 years ago. No podcast.
And so we didn't have it either, y'all.
Yeah.
This is a work in progress and we're trying to figure out our cycle and figure out how we do it.
The examples we give you of our fights, they happened like yesterday. They happened 5 minutes ago. It's not like they happened 10 years ago and we have mastered them. It's that I bring you like an escalated situation from Tuesday or whatever the thing is.
And so it's not like this is resolved. And it's not like we're trying to just train out of you your protective strategies. Yeah. What we're trying to do is have you notice it and be able to talk about it with your spouse and say, hey, this is going on inside me. The real trick here is also being able to not blame the spouse.
Yeah.
Because guess who triggers me the most in this world?
Me. I do.
You're a good guesser. But it's how that works, man. I care about her the most.
Yeah.
She's got the most influence in my life and what I do.
Is the most important.
And so she's going to trigger me the most or cue me up the most or hurt me the most probably. Yeah. And I give her that right in some ways because I care about her.
Yeah.
And I don't want to stop caring about her. And so that's a tricky place to be. But really all we're trying to help you do is say, hey, this is happening. That is your first step to say, oh, this is happening.
I think even right now, this whole first leading into what we're talking about in this episode is to first say, look, it's hard. I mean, that's what this specific episode is about. It's just to validate if you are having a hard time catching your cycle in the moment, Yes. If you are having a hard time renaming or choosing a different strategy when you're so used to the strategy that you have had, yes, that's correct also. If you are finding yourself able to have the conversation and longing to have a deeper connection with your partner, but just really still feeling unseen or unheard or unable to articulate, yes, all of that. Yes, yes, and yes, some more. It is a process that when we kind of back up and go, hey, how do we let them know how we really do get ahead of it? And Chad and I kind of have been, tossing this back and forth. What is the thing that we do? And the thing we both came to that we do is that we do it.
You have to do it.
We do the work. We do these podcasts, and then I listen to my own podcast, and I'm like, oh, that's insightful. I should try that tomorrow in the fight that I'm about to have.
I make her listen to one every day. I say make, I don't force, but I encourage her. No.
Because we, just like you, can take this stuff in intellectually, and I can even give it back to you intellectually, and I can articulate exactly what's happening for you, pursuers and withdrawers, and we can talk about it, and so everybody understands. But just like the rest of humanity, in the moment that my emotion takes action, activates, tells me something's wrong, it is the loudest thing happening in my head and in my body. And in that moment, it's hard for me to remember my knowledge, and it's hard for me to remember my intellect. In that moment, I hear my body screaming something at me, and that is, I don't know do withdrawers have like a screaming voice? I don't know. Mine's pretty aggressive.
Like shrill, or is it... See how I avoided. Anyway.
And so that's, I think, for us, somebody else has said, like, what's the secret sauce? That's ours. We go to workshops. We read stuff about attachment. We listen to people who are better than us tell us what works. And we try that stuff on. And we both, I think, have, whether you want to call it a benefit or not, the really harsh experience of failing, of the relationship that we were in before, devastated. So we both have kind of gone, man, if we don't work on this, we know the alternative, and that is really yuck. So I like you, and I want this to work, so I'm going to really trust the process, which it's hard to do, especially since it's not a process that I ever saw happening before. It's a brand new process, and I'm leaning into it, which is counterintuitive.
I want to say too, like, it makes me think of this, but I'm like, you're saying we trust the process, we do work. We do, but I think something else that divorce taught us was that we have the ability to fail. Like, we have the ability to, you screwed some things up, Angela.
I did.
I screwed some things up also. And we were able to go, oh, this is my fault. Like, we can own, like, oh, we are flawed humans. Yeah. And I think that that's really obvious when you mess up in a big way. Like, there is not a luxury, but there is a benefit that comes out of this big, painful experience. It's that, oh, maybe I'm flawed too. Maybe I have a problem, which allows, I think, us. And so I want to encourage you to try to. In a big way. No, golly, don't fail in a big way. If you can help it.
But here's the thing. I know so many people who have failed in a big way do seem to.
Some don't, though. No, I mean, we can argue right now if you want. But I'm like, some do, some don't. But I think both of us have really come to the table going, man, I screw that up.
Yeah.
And so,
and I know the part I played in it.
Yeah. And if there's a way that you can in your own relationship, and again, I'm kind of just throwing this out there. Like, if you can say, I want to look at my part of what I screw up, of how I get it wrong, of how I miss. Yeah. And gosh, I'm going to try to do the best I can. Not really, we're going to try not to screw up, but I'm going to recognize that I do. Yeah. I think one of the places that really can get us stuck anyway is when I really focus on Angela. If I start going, oh, well, if she would just this, or if she would just that, or if she would, if she would just calm down, whatever the thing is. I know, I'll get you mad right now. But I'm like, if I start focusing on her and kind of what she should do differently,
calm down.
Then it gets out of control, right? And I start kind of, I've had people say, oh, I'm just so prideful, I need to change that. I'm like, I don't know if it's pride. I don't know if it's protection. I don't know what that is. Yeah. But I do. I think if I can slow down and just say, what is my part? Can I own my part? Can I see that I did something? Can I see, however big or small?
Yeah.
Right? Even if only 2% is my part, okay, I'm going to own that 2%, and that's the part I'm going to work on. And I'm going to tell Ange, this is my 2%. I'm sorry for my 2%. I won't say 2% because she won't, she'll be like, oh, I'm 98. Now I get it.
We did a podcast a while back and you said it was only, was it a 2%?
2% better. Because I'm doing all the work. No, I'm kidding.
I want to talk about this for a second because early in our podcast a year ago when we first started, we talked about this and we kind of dove right into pursuers and withdrawers owning their pieces that they do. And for me, this is a hard thing for a brand new aware pursuer to land, is that I contributed something to this negative because I am working really hard and I'm doing all the things and I see all the pieces. And if everybody would just do what I tell them, everything would go. Like, our narrative is,
it's hard for pursuers,
man. We are doing everything that we can.
Yep.
So to take in that part of it was on me, that maybe it was my control or my tone that was shaming, or maybe it was the part I played in it, not being vulnerable. Hard for me to even identify that.
Yeah. I think with pursuers and withdrawers, it depends kind of who you are a little bit, but like, I have withdrawers that say, I do every single task. I make every single effort. There isn't a list that I don't check. There's not a box, or the box that's not checked on the list. It's never enough. And so I think when you've tried so hard for so long, and that's why I think it's really tough for a couple that's been, married for 20 years, because I have been doing this kind of worked, Chad or Angela or whoever, this kind of worked for 15 years, but the last 5 years, one or the other of us has been really unhappy, and now it's kind of brought forward, and now we're trying to do something different. And like, golly, all the moves that have ever worked seem like they just fall flat right now. So it's really hard. And
then a lot of times in those hardest places, a body can only take so much. They long for connection. It's really easy. Chad and I, because of the work we do, we work with chaos. We work with couples who unfortunately have had the worst case scenarios where there's addiction and affairs and all the things. Yeah. And so we see so often these couples that have just been worn out on each other, that just aren't getting any responses, that aren't able to be vulnerable with each other, and they long for something, and they turn elsewhere. Yeah. And so then you have this relationship where both of them love each other and they really want it to work out, but out of desperation or out of a bad choice, they do something else. And now that's the thing that is looked at. And now it's really hard to not only, forgive that, but then to get back into this other vulnerable place. And so for us, I think when we even think about the process that we're in, that we try to model for others. Like we wanted to do this podcast because we recognize, hey, there are couples out there, they just don't have the tools they need. How can we show them the concepts, model for them how to apply it, and then get them to actually try it on themselves, hoping that would help people have some reps and that's that what we wish we know, kind of tying it back into that. But for us, what we really want to be able to do is say, hey, we do know that we say it all the time. We're pitching you guys ninja moves. We are asking you to do something that isn't natural, that doesn't feel comfortable, that sometimes feels false or contrived. Yeah. That we're saying, say it this way. Instead of defending yourself, validate how crazy your partner is. How crazy? Maybe not exactly in those words. But you're crazy and I love you. You say that to me and it's fantastic. It's really good. Actually. Well, but anyway, doesn't work for everybody. But I'm saying, I think our connect point is kind of a simple connect point, and I want to just pitch it. I think there's something to be said for, just turning to one another, and maybe practice this on your own before you go talk about it. But being able to go, you know what, this relationship's hard, and I'm fighting for this thing the best way I know how to. I recognize I miss it, but I want to be in this. Yeah. Right? Like, even just that little bit of like saying, I recognize I miss it. I am fighting for this and I want to be in it. Just that little sentence, I think, is enough to say, okay, we can keep working. I have helped several couples this week have that exact conversation where they turn and say, look, this is new for me and I need grace because I'm going to get it wrong, but I care enough to try this new thing. Yeah. So please notice the effort I'm making, and we're going to fumble through this. But please know I'm trying.
You had them say a lot of things.
I did. I have. I talk a lot and then I let them.
But I'm just teasing. But I mean, just say it as simply, like I did, or with as many words, like Angela did, as you want to.
Listen, with drawers, you get the small version. With pursuers, you get the novel.
They'll be like a poem. I took the time to write my vows. You know. Okay. But I love it.
This is hard, and I love you.
This is hard. I want to work on it. Yeah. I'm not so good at it. I love that because you kind of added that. Like, it's like, hey, this is a struggle for me, but I want to work on this. I want to be closer. I want to know you more. I want to be more connected to you. But take the time to kind of put that to your words.
I want to say one more thing because I have a lot of words. I'd like to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
I think there can be this idea that if we don't get it right, that we're going to get rejected or we're going to get criticized. And I think that's why this connect point is important. Because we're coming to each other and saying, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get this right. Can you still love me in this process? Because I'm committed to you. And so I think that is what we're asking you to connect on. To kind of reiterate your commitment to each other, that first acknowledge, hey, it's harder than I thought. And I love what Chad said when we started the series, What We Wish We Knew. It's not like, had I known how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have done this.
We do something else.
Because sometimes I think people think that. But I actually still choose you. And you're the one that I want to be with. And you're the one that I want to work this out with.
You're the one I want to fight with. Sorry,
you're the one I want to fight with.
Or for.
Yes. Right. But in this process to say, I'm going to get it wrong. And can you just still love me as I'm learning this? We're well along in this. Chad and I just celebrated 10 years. 10 years is no small thing, by the way.
No.
Both of our previous marriages blew up long before this.
It was a hot mess.
And so to be able to say, hey, I love you. This is hard. I recognize it's hard. Acknowledge it's okay to say we've had a hard time. And here's what we want to work on. Being able to try something new that we're learning that actually is the response that our heart longs for, that our bodies long for, that we long for with each other. We want to help you get there. We want to validate for you guys. This isn't easy stuff. And we care about you. And this is why we take the time to do this, because we want marriages to succeed. And so
this matters.
We come alongside you saying, hey, we see how hard you guys are working. Pursuers trying to be a little less or say it a different way. Withdrawers trying to engage when it's really scary and dangerous. It doesn't feel safe. You guys are doing an incredible job. And if it's hard and it's bumpy, you're right where you're supposed to be. And that's where these new moves need to happen.
Thanks so much for checking us out. We appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this, please take the time to like and give us a thumbs up or subscribe, rate us, put in some comments about what you loved or didn't like. Even is fine with us, man. We value your feedback. We're excited to do this. And please continue to listen. Check us out again on the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.